So how does he survive this?
You'll see at the end.
That is wild.
I'll just zoom forward a bit because we don't need to see it falling for 2 minutes. But
How long does it take? Like 2 minutes actually to
yeah, it's like
just 2 minutes of free fall. That's wild.
Did you guys ever do that?
Oh, I want to go skydiving so bad.
Really?
I might
You
go
would?
next summer.
I don't know, man. That's
yeah, I'd skydive. I wouldn't do it without a parachute.
Well,
yeah.
obviously.
Really?
Okay, watch this. What the happened? I think he's.
The Luke.
The
Oh,
Luke,
is there
yeah.
like
59
a?
feet off the ground.
Is there a foam pit or something?
Kind of. It's like a net they have.
Imagine he misses. He's so dead.
Look at this. Like,
Wait, what is he landing on?
it's a net. You'll see it in one
Goes to his
second. Look at
back.
that.
Oh my god.
Oh, that's sick. Dude, what do you think that feels
That's
like?
crazy.
Yeah, just sudden deceleration too. It's like
Dude's
that
got
is
some
such
sweaty
a
pits.
small target for
Relative to how high
yeah,
he's jumping
relative to
from.
how far you are away. You're like half a mile in the sky.
Yeah.
And you're aiming
That's
for
literally
this target.
like 1% of your field of view from up there.
Imagine you just feel like a gust of wind start to like
Yeah.
push
Like,
you
oh,
over and you're like,
You're like, no, stop. Yeah, that's.
What was that net made out of? Do you know?
I don't know. I think it was just a pretty standard net, but it was huge so that it could
It
absorb.
stretched
its
a lot.
impact, Yeah. Anyway,
alright, Caleb, you got material you said?
yeah, sure. Okay, so. I guess one thing recently that I saw, which I thought was super cool, is these geckos. You know how they can climb walls and stuff?
Yeah.
It's like I've never really thought about how they can do that. They just kind of do. I don't know. They have sticky skin or something. But what's actually happening is they have these tiny infinitesimal little, like, not hairs, but like smaller than hairs on their hands, that it just creates a completely flat surface with whatever wall they're touching. And then because of that, there's so much surface area that
So much
connects.
friction.
Well, it's not friction, but actually it's London dispersion forces. So it's like,
What?
Wait,
Have
is
you
that
taken
like
anything chemistry?
Is that like
No.
Actually, I'll let
Okay.
you explain because I don't.
Yeah,
exactly
so-
know what that is.
it's where you have the molecules or the atoms in the wall and atoms in the lizard's hand, and they're neutral atoms, but like, you know how in an atom there's the nucleus and then there's the field of electrons around it. So randomly the electrons just move around, and sometimes the electrons will move, like they'll all be on one side, and so that creates a positive charge on this side of the electron,
Oh.
and then that kind of induces a dipole on the wall.
Gotcha.
So then it's a positive and a negative force attracting each other. And so since there's just so much surface area, that's how they're able to stick to the wall.
That's nuts.
That's
Which
wild.
is wild. And it's actually like a super, super, super strong force.
Yeah.
They could hold onto a wall like with just a tiny little point connecting to it. And so scientists are trying to use that technology to make like super, super strong tape. And one thing they did was so they're not able to replicate it exactly, but it's pretty close. And they made this tape that when it connects with the surface, it's just like the strongest hold of any tape you could imagine. But when you like tip it upside down, you can just peel it right off. Like there's just no, because
It's not actually sticky.
it's not actually sticky. But they were able to anchor a winch with the tape, just like 3 small bands of the tape anchored a winch, and we're able to pull a car.
Oh my
That's
gosh.
nuts.
So is that like, will it only stick or like create like those forces would work on any surface, or is it has to be like a specific, like either metallic or wood or like?
Yeah, it has to be a really smooth surface. So like it won't connect to your hand, for example, because you have ridges
Yeah.
in your hand, and it's like a mountain compared to the smoothness of that surface.
So I'd imagine it wouldn't work on some like piece of like plywood or something, anything that's like.
Yeah, probably not wood, but so what they used to anchor it down with when they were pulling the car is they just put it on top of a piece of PVC pipe.
Okay.
And so that had a completely strong hold. And then it also works with a lot of different fruits.
Okay.
So like a tomato, you can just pick up a tomato or an apple or anything, basically anything that has a really smooth surface.
Okay.
That's nuts.
So when the geckos use that in nature,
Mm-hmm.
can they climb trees? Because I feel like like something like a tree or like a
Yeah,
rock.
that's a question I had about it is like how, because a tree obviously doesn't have the same smoothness as like a PVC pipe.
Yeah.
But so I don't know exactly how it works, but maybe it's for one because the gecko, like the strength of the smoothness of the gecko's hand is actually way smoother than the stuff they're trying to replicate. And also, since their hands, like they have dexterity a little bit,
Yeah.
so maybe they can just actually grab on
Like
tree bark.
manipulate it kind
Yeah.
of around the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, so like that's kind of like what they did with Velcro, didn't they?
Yeah,
Because they saw Velcro in that one plant, and then they kind of like took that technology and improved upon it, made Velcro. I feel like there are like more instances of that where like we take something from like
nature
and then we kind of like create our own sort of deal, which is cool. It makes you wonder like what else is out there that we could still, because like dude, if you look at like animals are doing some crazy stuff.
Oh yeah,
bro.
for sure.
Like we tend to put like humans on like this hierarchy of animals in terms of like competence. But if you look at like the animal kingdom, like I feel like there's so much like knowledge to be had there that like we can like take.
Well, it's so interesting how some of that, like I can't think of other specific examples right now, but I feel like there's definitely been several times where we created technology from nature, or like we saw something where like that could be useful.
Yeah, like flight.
Yeah, and exactly. And it's
Yeah.
so wild to think that that stuff in nature just like develops as a result of evolution, and it wasn't even like, oh, I want to do this. It's just that's what ended up happening to the animal over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, one thing that we could potentially get in the future by learning how animals do it is like seeing a wider range of light.
Oh, okay.
Because right now we see just like a tiny,
1/1,000,000th of like
Yeah.
a millionth
Of
of
the
the electromagnetic spectrum.
yeah.
Or and so like when we say radiation, what that actually means is just light, and we happen to see just a tiny fraction of that radiation. But bees, for example, can see like into the ultraviolet, and I think down to the infrared. And there are animals that definitely see down into the infrared. And it's wild because we think that we can see everything. Like we can't even imagine what it's possible to not
Yeah.
see. But like one example I heard is plasma. When it gets super hot, it just turns invisible because the wavelength becomes so short that it's giving off that it just like it is beyond the range of visible light. And so the purple that you see, like, you know, in those movies where there's plasma and stuff, the purple that you see around it is the stuff on the outside that's like, it's cooler because it's not, or because it's contacting the outside. But like the plasma in the middle, that's like 100 million degrees.
Yeah.
We just can't see it. It's invisible. So like we potentially, if we're able to emulate how bees see, we can maybe see that. Or we could see heat like coming off the human body if we were able to figure out how to see in infrared.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that's really hard for us to grasp because the way we've always seen the world is just everything, like you can see almost everything except for like gases. It's like everything you see, the walls and everything, they have color. So you don't know what it would look like to be able to see like infrared light through someone's clothes or something, or like you could like see through very thin surfaces. So I feel like that's very hard to conceptualize.
Yeah, definitely. Almost impossible.
Yeah.
It makes you think like, because there's like, do you guys know what percentage of like all-time animal species is like extinct now? Like what percentage of like the plants and animals
99,
today?
I would guess.
Yeah, probably like majority of plants and animals that have existed like all time on the planet are probably gone. And it just makes you think like, if we take like Velcro from this plant and like that technology, whatever, like the adhesive technology from this animal, like what knowledge was lost
Yeah.
when we just like killed off like all these sorts of like animals and all that. Like, have you guys seen pictures of like the huge cats and like the huge like animals that animals first killed off when they like started to like aggregate together?
Like an ice age.
Yeah, there's some I think it might have been like before that though, like just like huge cats with like, it's nuts, like the animals that existed beforehand. But one of the animals that existed beforehand, you see that segue?
Yeah, that was smooth.
It was the mammoth, all right, the woolly mammoth, and something that apparently we might see in 2023 is this mammoth coming back to life, all right? Learned about CRISPR and AP Bio, you probably know what CRISPR is. Texas-based biotech startup is grinding away at colossal biosciences. And you guys know who Peter Thiel is?
No.
This guy's like a Silicon Valley investor legend. Tony Robbins, you guys know Tony Robbins. All these like the CIA, guys, the CIA. We're not going to talk about Paris Hilton, but CIA. All these guys are dumping money into the startup, and apparently they're actually making progress to resurrecting the mammoth. And I don't know, it's just pretty wild. Like, what if we could bring back mammoths, like what else could we bring back? And if we can bring back those other animals, does that somehow translate into us, like, extracting some of their technology or whatever and benefiting the human species?
So what's like the goal? Is it like, is there some sort of monetary incentive for the investors, or like are they just like, I want to see a woolly mammoth in real life?
So, I could be wrong, but I think it might be like a Jurassic Park deal.
No way.
I feel like I heard that. Like,
Well,
that
they
That's
must not have
actually-
seen the movie. They don't know what's gonna happen.
That actually kind of like, you could make a lot of money from that if you had
dude,
a.
I would pay. Are you kidding?
Yeah, that would be so sweet.
That is a good point. Like, how are they gonna make money?
Well, and also like, are they planning? I don't know how the cloning technology or anything works. Would it be like? How does something like that get born into existence? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I forget.
Like, how do you just go from DNA to like a living being?
So I remember them talking about it. I believe that they're taking some of the DNA from the mammoths and then they're somehow planting it in elephants.
Yes.
Like, elephants are like,
The closest.
it's like us and chimps, where
Yeah.
like 99% of their DNA is like the same. And then they're somehow using like, it's like when you like plant a fetus in someone else and then they give like,
Yeah.
they give birth.
Yeah.
But it's your child, you know? It's like the same type of deal. What's that called again? Like
Surrogacy?
a surrogate mother or whatever. Yeah, so I think it's kind of like that. But yeah, I don't know why the CIA is back in this. That's kind of weird to me. Like, I don't know what kind of incentive they would have. But
That one thing that kind of makes me think
here
of.
we go. Surrogate parents,
Yeah.
DNA matches. So they're using the Asian elephant.
Largest living land
African
animal.
elephant. They got a nice ass site.
Yeah. To be honest, this website's pretty sick.
Oh, so it's like a preservation thing, I guess. Which I don't know how that relates to the woolly mammoth.
Yeah.
Well,
so
I guess what it proves is if we're able to bring back a species that's completely distinct or extinct.
Why do you look like this?
If we're able to bring back a species that's completely extinct, we don't have to worry so much about species today that are going extinct because we can just bring them back, you know?
I remember what's going on here. So this whole thing is a preservation project,
Okay.
I think. So what happens is, you guys know what a keystone species is.
yeah.
I've heard of it. But
So it's essentially like a species that you wouldn't think it has as much impact as it does, but it basically single-handedly like supports the ecosystem. You take out that species, everything starts falling apart. So the woolly mammoth traditionally was in charge of manipulating the environment somehow. Like I forget what exactly they do. I think they like knock down trees in the tundra and like rearrange the ground, basically keeping the tundra in a colder temperature. There's like a bunch of science behind it. But once they got extinct, then like gradually this process started happening where it like starts heating up the environment.
Okay.
So the reasoning is like if we can replace the mammoths back in, can we reverse that process and kind of like
Oh, that's wild.
yeah. So
That
it's like this
seems
huge.
really risky.
I know I mean it might be like playing God a little bit, but I think that's the idea. And yeah.
If you think about it, like realistically, differences between I'm not an expert on either of the animals, but like in my head, the only like major differences is like woolly mammoth has fur, elephant doesn't, and I'm sure there's obviously more intricate like differences in their diet or whatever, but like I feel like that's not as many genes as you would think you would need to change to quote unquote change the species.
Yeah, I suppose. And if there isn't that big of a difference, maybe it wouldn't have a huge impact on the environment that you're putting it into. Like if you're putting a mammoth on the African savanna, but I guess that's not really where it belongs, is it? It would.
Well, I don't think it would be able to survive even.
Yeah.
It would get like there was a reason it has a fur coat is because it lived in the tundra.
I don't know. That's wild.
Another thing I've been thinking about is you guys know who Hugh Jackman is?
Yeah.
The actor guy, whatever.
Wolverine.
He was on Tim Ferriss' podcast. You guys, it's a great podcast. And he said this thing where it was basically like, he basically started talking about this idea called the 85% rule. And he uses it, like he's an actor, but he also is like, he does like athletic stuff, training, whatever. I don't know. He does a lot of other stuff besides acting. And I'd like looked into this because I was like, some of the points he was making were like understandable. And so like the idea is that traditionally like we grow up hearing things like just do your best. Like just it's all about effort, it's not about talent. Like just like leave it all in the field, all that stuff. And I think his idea, and this is like a huge phenomenon among like high performance athletes, like runners, football players, baseball players, all these athletes. It's the idea is like you don't want to go on 100% because when you go 100%, then it alters your mind space. You're too tense. You're not like in the moment. You're like too like riled up. And actually, what you want to do is you want to be in this relaxed state a little bit, where it's like you feel that you have more to give. And so I was like looking into this, and it made me think that I read this book called the Book of Rings by this guy named it's hard to pronounce, Moyotomo Musashi or whatever, which is who this guy was he's like considered the greatest samurai to ever exist. This guy fought hundreds of sword fights. He's also a scholar. He like did all these sword fights. He was a legend in Japan in like the 2nd century BC, whatever. And then he goes up into the mountains, basically isolates himself, becomes a hermit, and writes all these books. And the Book of Rings is basically his book that goes over like, all right, what's the idea of like, how did I do it? And one of the things he says was, he said, in ordinary circumstances, as well as when practicing martial arts, let there be no change at all with the mind open and direct, neither tense nor lax, centering the mind so that there is no imbalance. Calmly relax your mind and savor this moment of ease thoroughly so that the relaxation does not stop its relaxation for even an instant. And I was like, okay, that, like, he's talking about, like, you want there to be no difference between being relaxed when you're not performing and, like, you want the same mindset, that relaxation. But he also says, if you slash with unreasonable force when you're going to kill someone, intending to deal a powerful blow of the sword, you will not be successful. This idea of holding back, of not going, like when I swing, I'm not giving 100% of my effort. I'm giving that 85%, right? I'm leaving some back. And then this other guy, Bruce Lee, you probably heard of him. So what a lot of people don't understand about Bruce Lee is he was like this huge movie star, right? He like big show business star, but he got hurt and then he turned to philosophy. He was like this huge philosopher that like I read one of his books and it was actually nuts. It was really good. But one of his philosophies is he says be relaxed but ready. Like you want to be ready but not tense. And he said that was like he competed in tournaments and he did all his fighting scenes and he said that was like his number one thing. So it's like this common idea among all these high performers is relaxation, and that apparently that leads to high performance. So I've just been thinking about that.
I can definitely relate to that. Like, I think the two sports that makes me think of the most is golf and tennis. Because, like, you can definitely relate in every sport, but if you're, like, if you're too tense, like, I think especially in individual sports, this happens a lot, where, like, you're trying too hard to win. Like, that just doesn't work. Like, you need to be in a state where you, like, almost don't even care about the result, and you're just, like, you're not even thinking, like, I know that sounds kind of like cliche, but like I feel like that's definitely what ends up happening, and it's necessary to be relaxed enough to a point where you're not just trying to do too much, and
That's I mean, I related back to my experiences in sports too, and it's like when I'm not even like really trying as much as I could, if I'm just there to kind of like have fun, whatever, I usually do better because I'm not in my head. So I started like thinking about like where do you see this in sports? Number one, Steph Curry.
Yeah.
Like that dude is the most relaxed ever. You look at his facial expression when he gets the ball, his eyes are like half closed. He's like whatever, like his face kind of like slack. He's chewing his mouth guard. Mm-hmm. Like it looks like he doesn't care, man.
Yeah.
But he's like one of the greatest players of all time. Another one, Usain Bolt. I was trying to pull up a clip, but it's not working right now. If you go and look at Usain Bolt before his matches, this man is out here like giving fist bumps to the guys, and he's like super chill. He's joking around. He's like he's dancing on the side because he knows that his mental performance is like his mental game is what leads to that performance, and if he can keep that relaxed, then like all these guys, Michael Phelps, same thing.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like once you see it, once you notice it, it's everywhere.
It seems weird. It seems counterintuitive to me because we have, like, there's a reason we get a little nervous. There's a reason we get, I guess you call it the jitters, like, because evolutionarily it puts you in that tense state, and then in that tense state you're ready to fight. You're ready to do whatever. And so, like, the whole point of the nerves is so that it prepares you to be in that difficult situation. So why do you think it is that, like, we have to counteract that in order to perform best?
One thing that actually really makes me think of is, I don't know if you guys have ever seen, like, pro archery. I haven't watched it myself, but I saw something about this on Joe Rogan. Mm-hmm. Like, 90% of, like, professional, like, archery people in the Olympics, they don't pick when they're going to fire the arrow. They have, like, something so it fires automatically, because knowing when it's going to let go, like, it, like, psychs you out and you tense up, and it messes with your accuracy. So they literally just have to sit there holding there, aiming it until it just goes automatically. There's only, like, a select few amount of individuals, like maybe 5 to 10%, that can actually just fire on command and hit and actually, like, stay relaxed enough, override their instinct to tense up when they're about to, like, have an action.
Yeah. And that's like the thing in football too, I realize, is like if you're expecting the hit, that's when you get hurt. Is because you tense up before you're about to do the hit, and then that actually like prevents you from actually like performing well and like absorbing the blow. And that, dude, that's cool that you bring up archery, because like archery has this history of being like intertwined with like Eastern thought. Like I've seen a bunch of books on like archery and like Zen Buddhism and like Taoism, and like it seems to be linked up, which I kind of want to try archery, because like I don't even know. There's something about like the sport and just like philosophy. I feel like there's something there. I don't know what the connection
Yeah,
is.
the utter focus and calm that it requires.
Well, I feel like that's something you see like. I know you were talking about like I don't know if it was taekwondo or kickboxing or whatever.
Jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, jujitsu. Like, I feel like that's something you see a lot more like Eastern thought. Like, it's less about like I don't know if this is actually true, but like in the past, it had been a lot of the sports were like jujitsu and like archery and stuff like that. And I feel like they had always tied it in with like the mental like side of things, where like we hadn't really done that as much in the West.
Yeah, I think it's a nice counterbalance. There's definitely like I feel like philosophy is like a marketplace where you want to go in, shop around. You don't want to buy the whole store.
Yeah.
You want to pick out like the things that you want that you can apply to your own life.
Yeah.
So, like, there are definitely people who romanticize these Eastern philosophies. Like a lot of people just like go to India and it's like they romanticize the whole continent and then they do like the whole namaste, guru, hippie thing. And it's like, then you're just doing it for a shallow purpose and you're not actually trying to understand the philosophy. I think there are definitely pros for like Western, like ambition, individuality, and like Greek virtues. But there's also something to be said about like, there's a story about archery and it's like this monk teacher, like the student is like struggling, hitting the target, whatever. And the monk teacher comes over and he's like, yeah, like, he says something to the effect of, don't even worry about like where the arrow lands.
Yeah, exactly.
And like, just don't even, don't let it register in your head when you shoot. Just shoot. Just keep shooting.
Yeah.
And he's trying to empty this idea of like having a goal. And this gets to the root of like Eastern thought, which is like detachment from outcome. I think we talked about this already, but yeah, I think that's really interesting. And that goes to what we're saying, where you're not trying as hard to get to where you want to go. Sometimes when you pull back, that's actually when you're able to go farther. So.
No, I can 100% agree with like thinking about the outcome and trying too hard. I feel like that honestly applies to anything you do. Like I one time, like something this reminds me of is last year, we're sitting there in class, we're about to take the ACT, and I'd actually done like a good amount of practicing. I was like, I really need to do well in this. And they passed it out, and I had done I don't know how many practice tests. I think it was English first. And I'm like reading these questions and like there's so much stuff going through my mind. I'm like, I've done this, like why isn't this making sense? And I was like, okay, I just need to calm down. Like I know how to do this. And as soon as you calm down and detach yourself from like what's going to happen, it's so much easier to actually like just allow your brain to function and do what you've practiced.
It's about self-trust.
Yeah.
Like when I did the best on the ACT was when I cared the least. Because I had that trust in myself. Have you guys read the book, The Inner Game of Tennis?
Yep.
Yeah. Hell of a book.
Yeah.
And it goes into this where he argues that there are two aspects of the self. There's self one, which is the conscious, like, I'm trying to do this, I have an objective. And then there's self two, which is like your unconscious, like, it stores knowledge that you didn't know you had. And he argues that, like, the key to high performance in any area of life, relationships, sports, work, school, is letting go of trying to control self two and getting in your own way and just like trusting that self two has the capabilities to take over.
Yeah.
Which kind of goes with what we're talking about.
Yeah, while we're talking about this, you mentioned the other day, you brought up meditation and how when you meditate, you're able to like almost extract yourself from the world and kind of see time flow by. So like, can you just talk about that a little more? Because I wanna know what you're saying by that.
So, Tim Ferriss, I was talking about him earlier. He wrote this book called Tools of Titans, which is basically like he asked all these high-performing people across all areas of life, politics, music, writing, investing, like lawyers, everyone. all these high-profile people. I want to know what the number one thing that these people listed as the habit that's changed their life for the most is meditation.
I guess.
Yeah. So
Really?
yeah. So it's the idea is that when you okay, this gets into like another key area of Eastern thought, which is non-identification and the non-existence of the self. So the idea is that us Westerners tend to identify with the thoughts that are running through our head. We tend to identify with the feelings that arise in our stomach, and we tend to identify with our body. But the argument is, from all these mystics and gurus and whatever, is that these thoughts, they just come out of nowhere. And a lot of times they don't serve a function and they can actually harm us. We don't know where they come from. So if you can't control them, how can you identify with them? And once you like detach yourself from those thoughts and you can see them objectively, then they no longer have any impact on how you conduct yourself in life. Same thing with your feelings. A lot of times feelings are irrational and they can actually hurt us, like road rage. Some dude cuts you off, you're consumed by this rage, it takes you over. It's like some other entity coming over and just seizing the control. So if you can't control that feeling coming up and like taking over, then is that you? And the mystics would argue no. Same thing with your body. We have control of our legs and our limbs, all that, but can we control if it ages? Can we control if it breaks? Can we manipulate the shape of our foot to grow bigger or smaller? No. Like we're just inhabiting the body. We're using it, but it's not truly us. And then they take it farther where it's like, if you keep going, I'm a Catholic, but then I switched to being a Protestant. I'm a Republican, but then I switched to being a Democrat. If I can switch that so easily, was that really me to begin with, you know? Like all these things you can change, but then you still argue that the self was preserved, so then they weren't actually you. So all these things that we use to identify ourselves, they're not actually us. Which is, it turns into like a mind-bending thing where it's like the deeper you look, the harder it is to find where yourself is. So
okay, like I like that, but like what is like, how does meditation tie into that, and like how does meditation help you like rise above that, basically?
So it goes with non-attachment, where it's like when you sit down and you close your eyes, thoughts are gonna arise, feelings are gonna arise, sensations of the body are gonna arise. You're gonna feel lower back pain. You're gonna feel pissed that your mom said that thing to you. You're gonna feel nervous about that test that's coming up. The key is you can't stop that from coming. A lot of people have this misconception that meditation is clearing the mind. You can't clear the mind. The mind is gonna do what the mind does. It's like a river. It just like keeps going. You gotta step out of the river. You gotta see the river for what it is. Once you detach yourself, and for me, it's like this actual sensation of like, you step back, you step out of the river. Then you can see it coming by, you no longer identify with it. Then it's like, it gives you more independence and control, where it's no longer controlling yourself.
Yeah.
And that's the idea.
Okay.
As then you can see like, man, I'm getting pissed at Caleb right now. This isn't really me. This is like thoughts and feelings that are taking over. Now I can step back and I can push that to the side, not let that control me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It basically gives you more control of the mind.
Okay, so you said something earlier when you were talking about these thoughts that come into our mind. They serve no biological purpose, and there's no reason to have them. It made me think of this one quote I read recently from C.S. Lewis. He was talking about awe, or like why we experience awe, but it's kind of a similar thing. Like why do these things pop into our mind that seem to have no biological purpose? He said, either it is a mere twist in the human mind corresponding to nothing objective and serving no biological function, yet showing no tendency to disappear from that mind at its fullest development in poet, philosopher, or saint, or else it is a direct experience of the really supernatural, to which the name revelation might properly be given. So what he's saying there is, like, no matter who it is, no matter how, we've been developing as humans for tens of thousands of years, maybe millions, I don't know. And you can achieve the highest level of sanctity or genius, and yet these thoughts that seem to have no biological function don't disappear, even though we've gone through thousands and thousands of years of evolution. So it seems like there is some sort of purpose or some sort of, like, we shouldn't just completely ignore them. Do
You're talking about
understand
like
what I mean?
revelations?
No. Okay, so like when you were talking about meditation, you were saying that these ideas that come into our mind, like, you should separate yourself from them because that's not really yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. When I think about it, it seems like a mistake to ignore that completely.
Ignore the thoughts.
Yeah.
So what would you say like, if you're saying not to ignore them, like, why should we listen to those
Like
thoughts?
you said
Or,
that
like,
you
what's the
should
purpose?
identify with them then in certain instances.
Well, I don't know. Okay, so what C.S. Lewis is arguing is that it's supernatural. It's a direct experience of the really supernatural, to which the name revelation might probably be given. So,
Thoughts are?
Yes. Well, okay. So he's talking about awe, like when you stand on a mountain and you're like, "Wow, this is incredible." But I think it relates to thoughts too, like, because they also seem to serve the same, like, no biological function.
Thoughts?
Okay, sorry, not thoughts in general, but the thoughts that you're talking about, where
Like random thoughts
popping into your head. Like, what were some of the examples that you gave earlier? Do you remember?
Like road rage? Or I guess that's
Or
like
like-
a feeling, but like nervousness for a test, like those thought patterns that just run through your head.
Yeah. So I don't know what we are to do about them. And maybe it is good to separate ourselves somewhat from them. Like, okay, so in the Catholic sense, I don't meditate every day, but I do pray the rosary every day.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like 20 minutes of time where I'm sitting in silence, like between myself and God. And it's like, it's almost the same idea as meditation, where
It's very similar.
right. So you're like, at the beginning, I like go through my day. What can I praise God for? What were the mistakes? And then I get what do I want to like pray for? And then I give all that back to God. So it's almost like separating myself from that, where it's like, I don't want these burdens, like all the pains or sufferings. I'm choosing, instead of to living. So like in a meditative sense, you would try to separate yourself from that burden.
Mm-hmm.
In the religious sense, you would give that burden back to God.
Yeah, so it's inner work.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the essence of meditation is inner work. And I forgot to say that the most popular form of meditation that I was describing is called mindfulness meditation.
Mm-hmm.
But there are like hundreds of different kinds of meditation. There's compassion meditation. They call it loving kindness meditation. There's like meditation on gratitude, which sounds like that's what you're doing. But anything where you're like being intentional about your inner state and like, kind of like going to work on it. I feel like that's meditation in a sense. That's why some people say that like washing dishes can be a sort of meditation, or like walking, or like any of these things where like you're doing something, but you're also like intensely aware of your inner state.
Mm-hmm.
Like anything kind of monotonous where you're doing like repeating a task over and over, or you're not, something that you don't have to consciously focus on and where you can kind of let your thoughts wander.
Right.
Is like you'll notice that your mind just goes places.
All right, so we've been talking about Eastern thought. Do you guys know who Rick Rubin is?
I do not.
I do not.
Dude, this guy right here is the key prime example of how Eastern philosophy can translate over to Western success. You look at this guy, man. This dude looks like such a hippie.
I'm not
You
going to
can
disagree
tell
with that.
You can tell the way he thinks by the way he looks. In a way.
Right.
All right, see, like you look at that guy in the street, you would be like, dude, this dude's a hobo, right? This man is behind this. He's the best American music producer of all time. This guy worked with everyone from Jay-Z, the Beastie Boys, Red Hot Chili Peppers, trying to pull up Kanye, like literally everyone in the music industry. Johnny Cash, rock, hip hop, country, literally everything. And he just his job is to go into the studio, and he says, what he does is he does like inner work with the musicians, so they can like get out of their way in a sense and like be more creative. And he has this whole philosophy of how he does that and like how he views performance and creativity. And it's super interesting. And he just like he just wrote a book that I'm working through right now called The Creative Act, A Way of Being, where he basically outlines like his philosophy on performance basically, and like how you can open the door for being more creative. And it's just super interesting because he thinks in exactly the same way that we were talking about. And he's incredibly successful. He's a legend in the music industry, but no one knows about him. So I don't know, I think the deeper you look, the more you'll probably see like examples of people following this philosophy. But
So does he like attribute a lot of his success to meditation and Eastern thought? Or like what specifically would you say like sets him apart in his philosophy?
Sets him apart as opposed to like Western
Yeah,
thought?
like what's like a diverging thought that he has?
So he really gets into detachment from the outcome,
Yeah.
which is, we don't need to talk about that again, but he also has this idea of like, he gets really mystical where he talks about like creativity as being something outside yourself where you can set the stage for it, but you're not doing anything. It's like you're setting the table in a sense for creativity to come and eat. Like that's his whole job. Is this guy has no music talent in any way. Like I don't even think he can like play the guitar or sing or anything. His whole job is just like, there's stories of him in the 80s when he was in high school. He would just leave and like get on the bus and then just travel around and listen to all these like hip hop was coming in at the time. This guy was responsible for bringing hip hop to the mainstream. Like he's just been a diehard fan of music his whole life, and somehow he just worked his way into like working with all these artists. It's just crazy.
So his thing is kind of just like come in contact with with musical artists and getting them in like a mental state where they can like be creative and like make music without their thoughts getting in the way, type of thing.
Yeah.
Following
our instincts. Like he believes in like intuition.
Shut off those voices.
Yeah,
open-minded. Okay.
Kind of like that thing that we were talking about, like detachment from thoughts. I don't. You would think that I would have a greater sense of his philosophy, given that I've been reading his book, but
Yeah.
it's kind of like all over the place, and it's more of a sense that he's just like this super wise guy that like his wisdom like translates over to music in like a weird connection way that you wouldn't expect.
So you said earlier, when he's trying to get people to create music, he's saying, don't just detach yourself and let the creativity come in. Like you're not the one being creative. It's like where does he say that comes from?
The creativity?
Yeah.
He says he doesn't know, and I don't think anyone knows. Creativity is like this weird thing where it's like, I don't think anyone knows where it comes from.
I believe in most
outside
anything.
entities. He gets kind of like mystical sometimes, where he says like he talks about sometimes how the universe will like conspire to make things happen. Like he gets a little out there sometimes, but it's just cool because you don't usually see people who believe stuff like this, like super mystical stuff. You don't really see them being high performers all the time. This guy is. This guy walks around with bare feet, shorts,
Yeah.
blank white T-shirt.
Yeah, most of those guys are
huge
homeless.
beard. Yeah, like he
But
looks
he's a
like he looks like a
millionaire.
guru.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's just cool. He's like an example of that philosophy working.
Yeah.
Anyone got anything else?
If we're segueing to a different topic, I watched an interview with this guy. He moved to the U.S. from Guatemala when he was like 18 to come to Duke University, and then from there he just like started inventing things like softwares. And so the first thing he did was CAPTCHA, which
Oh yeah. Like the
you
verified
obviously know what that
robot.
is, where it's like it gives you a set of like a string of letters and numbers that are all distorted, and then you type it in and it says like, okay, you're not a robot. So he created that, and then he's like, it's helping like the internet be rid of bots, but it's also wasting people's time. It was like, he calculated it out, and it was like 50,000 hours a day that people across the world were spending on CAPTCHA alone. And so he's like, what if we were able to make this useful, where people are using these 50,000 hours to actually improve the world in some way? So he started using the data to start training robots for like Google's DeepMind, basically.
Yeah.
So then he called that reCAPTCHA, where now he uses the data to train language models where like it can see words that are like really distorted and then figure out what the actual word says. So he used that to digitize like years and years and years of New York Times articles, and then also when they started doing the pictures, where it's like select traffic lights or select bikes, then that is used to train like
That's cool.
the AI software for Google's
That's genius.
self-driving cars, right? Yeah. And then later this guy went on, after he sold that, he had another game too, where it was like, basically, I don't know how this game was successful, but two people were shown an image of something, and they were like tried to make a description of the image, and if their descriptions matched, they like won a point or something. So I don't know how that's a fun game, but anyway, it became pretty successful, and then Google was able to use that to improve their image modeling system, where it's like, because then suddenly they had millions of descriptions of images, so then they're able to use that for
That's
all
crazy.
sorts of things.
I'm gonna piss my pants.
I feel like that's like the whole reCAPTCHA thing, like using that data to like train robots on how to interpret that. Is that not almost like counterproductive though? To like if you can make a bot that can read that, you're pretty much just like, you just ruined your old invention,
I
bro.
know.
Like if somebody else can make that, like literally any robot can just solve CAPTCHA. Like am I?
Yeah, I thought the same thing, and I'm pretty sure that is honestly the case now. Like, if you put a robot and gave it this text, like, it'd be able to read that.
Yeah,
right?
you would think.
I don't know.
But I mean, maybe that's just because most people are, or like most bots on the internet are, like more based on like, I don't even like, in my head that doesn't even like make sense. What are you using bots like? I guess to like make extra accounts for some sort of
Yeah.
monetary incentive is
Well-
usually what comes to mind for me. But
When you log into the ChatGPT, it tells you, it makes you do the reCAPTCHA thing, like, I'm not a robot, and then it says 90% of internet traffic is bots. So I don't know what are the point of bots on
Yeah,
the internet,
like-
but apparently it makes up a huge percentage of
Yeah.
the bandwidth.
I would definitely believe that. But I'm just very curious of what the incentive behind creating internet bots is. Because in my head that almost like doesn't even make sense that they're just there's all these bots going around because it's not like a robot typing on a computer. Obviously,
Right.
it's just like maybe something running an algorithm over and over. But let's see what this says.
So it's obviously to simulate human activity. Roman, we were talking about bots. Like 90% of internet activity is from bots. So like, do you know why that is?
I just want to mention this.
Yeah.
Did you hear that, like, so Elon bought Twitter, right?
Uh-huh.
And it, like, failed to mention that, like, a huge percentage of people on Twitter are bots.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, bro spent like 45 billion. And then it's like,
It's like 80% of the users are bots.
they're all fake, man. Sorry.
Just thought you should know.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
What's the question?
Okay, so we were talking about the reCAPTCHA thing, and then why is it even important to limit bots? Apparently, 90% of the internet traffic is just bots. So like, what are they for? What are they doing? Do you know? Do you know anything about that?
Well, I think at least some of them is like countries like Russia and Iran or Saudi Arabia. Like, have you heard about the Saudi Arabia troll farms? I think it was Russia. Well, they're troll farms basically. They realize that platforms like Twitter are these huge opportunities for influencing the public. So they basically have like thousands of people working in these troll farms, and they're paid to like spread disinformation, run propaganda campaigns, basically just like spam everything to try and change elections, stuff like that. That exists. There's this thing that Russia did that they found out about where it was like 99% of Christian platforms on, I think it was like Instagram, were Russia was behind it. Like Christian platforms. So I don't know what the story was behind that. Might not have been 99%, might have been less, but like majority. So they were doing that, and then they were also inciting these rallies where they were trying to get people in Texas to, like, Christians would come and do a rally, and then they would also have non-religious people meet, and they would stage it next to each other,
To create
trying to incite violence, stuff like that, where they were using social media to actually incite people in real life to go places so that they would mingle and create conflict.
That's wild.
So that's what I think it is.
Well,
That's okay. So basically, the idea behind that is because the way we segued to that from the captures, and we're like, why do these exist? So it's basically to prevent it from having an impact on the real world, type of thing.
I think bots are used as mechanism, not all the time, but a lot of the time to try and sabotage things, whether that be
So you don't think
countries
it's
or-
monetary? You think it's not monetary? It's more about
I think it's like warfare. Like if you were a company and your competitor had this like online like this website that they were using, if you could find a way to use bots to like flood their system,
yeah.
crash
Yeah.
their server, like would most people do that who are leading businesses? Probably. Like it's at the end of the day, it's warfare out there in business. So
Yeah.
I think that's what a lot of it is. What were you gonna say?
Well, I didn't have any specific ideas, but I think
You're just
I have
wondering.
heard about that one before, where people like a new product comes out on a competitor's website, and so they send thousands of bots to flood it, shut down the website, and then nobody can buy it.
Yeah.
It's like,
is that even legal?
I don't know.
Or
Man.
like how do you make that illegal?
yeah, I don't know how you would. I don't know, but I'm sure it's not legal because it's like unfair competition.
It's like
basically.
corporate
It's
sabotage.
corporate
I don't know
sabotage.
what you would call it.
You're
But
talking about Google? Have you guys heard about? Okay, we'll kind of like hedge around AI. We're not going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about what's going on around it. So, Microsoft owns Bing. Yes,
Right.
they were one of the first investors in OpenAI. They invested like $1 billion in
billion.
yeah,
well,
10
no, they
billion.
just invested it,
And they did it
additional
again.
10 billion.
They're going balls deep in OpenAI, all right?
Right.
This is their their ace. All right. The plans for OpenAI has said that they plan to make a search browser using ChatGPT so that you can personalize your searches. And like, imagine if like Google knew you and it knew exactly what you're looking for. It's almost like your buddy. Like, hey man, remember that one thing that I searched like a week ago? And Google's like, yeah, man, I got you. Yeah, here. So Microsoft is planning to take Bing. Bing, dude. Bing. Guess what the number one
worst possible search engine.
Guess what the number one search on Bing was this year?
ChatGPT. I don't know.
Google.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I totally believe that. I mean,
As soon as people get on Bing, they're like, ew, what is this? I
I mean,
want
let's be real,
Google.
nobody has knowingly actually wanted to use Bing.
Yeah,
Like,
dude, Bing is like that kid who gets picked last in dodgeball, bro. Like no one wants Bing. So it's like Bing is like a underdog here, but they have the potential to take over the internet search game. So what happened is Google's smart. Google sees this. Sergey and Larry Page, the two Google founders, they stepped away a couple years back because, bro,
They're rich.
Google's a monopoly, dude. Like, no one's coming. Like, we say when we want to look something up, we go, "Hey, man, just Google that."
Yeah, yeah.
That's how much of a monopoly they have.
Like it's a bird.
So Larry and Sergey were like, "Man, like, we don't even need to manage this anymore. Like, let's just go chill with our yachts and our like beach houses." Dude, this is going down. Larry and Sergey are coming back to Google because they're like, "Oh shit, like Bing might take over." And they're
just Bing that later.
yeah.
yeah, dude. Imagine like what kind of dystopian world would that be if
Now
like,
we're using Bing.
yeah, just Bing it, bro. Dude, George Orwell would be like
Yeah.
turning over in his grave.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, so that's happening, and it's like this race now between search engines. Like I'm sure, like I don't even know any other search engines, like Safari one?
Firefox.
Or Safari.
I think
Safari is
uses Google.
Apple's. No, Safari is Apple's search engine.
But doesn't it use Google? Like when you go on the Safari page, it like I think it's powered by Google.
I think it does, but there's like Firefox.
Bro, ain't nobody using
Firefox.
Firefox. Let's be
No,
honest.
for
Microsoft
Firefox is for like the
DuckDuckGo.
like the degenerate Linux
Oh, yeah, DuckDuckGo.
Linux users.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. So anyway, there's like this
like a
arms
different
race.
market.
It's like the Cold War, U.S. and Russia,
Almost.
or the Soviet Union. It's like the same thing with Safari. It's like who can harness the potential of nuclear power
yeah.
first? Who can harness the power of ChatGPT first? It's like this huge arms race that's going on right now, which I think is just crazy.
I
Like,
mean, right now Google is still ahead. Like if you search something if you type something into Google that you've done before, it's like, or okay, I don't know what I've searched on Google before, but like, have you ever seen that thing where it's like resume your journey?
yeah,
Yeah. So you were searching something on Google a week ago, and you're like, something sparks in your mind, and you're like, you want to come back to that and keep learning about it. You can resume your journey, and there are like all these other AI tools that Google is implementing, and it seems like, oh well, if Microsoft has ChatGPT, like Google's just gonna be so far behind. But at the same time, Google has been developing their DeepMind for years now, and it's super advanced. It's not the same as ChatGPT and OpenAI stuff, but it's, they have competing softwares. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays
Well, I
out.
feel like that's something we could see going in the future. Is like, right now we feel like Google's like the only option for a search engine, but what if it ends up becoming like, where there's certain search engines for certain things? Like, say Google's best for, I don't know, looking up general information, but then there's like this Bing that has this special AI integrated in it, which is better for something else.
yeah.
Like, I don't know, like more personalized searches, like that.
Relationship question.
Yeah, it's something like that. Like,
Yeah.
what if we saw that going into the future, where they have different specialized purposes?
Oh, I also saw this one.
I don't know if people would do that though, because I feel like people
You
like
think
usually
people would want a one-stop shop?
people usually pick something and then they stay to it. Like,
Yeah, who knows?
people, like, if you're like an Apple person, you usually don't have like an Apple phone, and then like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's usually like, oh, you probably do, but
You do too.
I do too. I guess that might be.
Well, that's
I don't
actually
know.
one thing that I was looking at some statistics. So it's like you've got Apple and Android for like phones, and then you've got like Apple and Windows for computers. something that I found really interesting is it was like percentage of, it was like a poll. And it's like, are you Apple Windows? Are you Android Windows? Are you Apple Mac? Or Android Mac? And it was like, basically my biggest takeaway is like, Android Mac users are like non-existent.
Yeah.
It was like 3% of people. But then it's like, if you have an iPhone, it's like pretty evenly split between Mac and Windows. And I just thought it's like interesting how like those target markets are different.
Yeah, it is weird.
Dude, Apple's like a cult. I feel like, have you seen like the camera capabilities on like the Google phone, and then like
Oh yeah.
like the storage capacities on Android, like in all metrics
If you
basically,
look at
like
it on paper,
they're-
it's not even close.
yeah.
Like,
But people are still like, I like my Mac,
I need my blue text
I like my
messages.
Apple, like
Well, Apple cameras are
They're good still.
like in terms of video at least they're the best of the best.
They-
And the
Yeah.
just a photo quality, like a Pixel might be better, but an iPhone is not like
It's not
miles
bad.
behind.
it's almost like
But also the blue bubbles.
Steve Jobs like was such an icon, man, that he found a way to like integrate Apple into like popular culture. Like it's just like a part of our cultural, I don't even know, but it's just like in there. It's lodged deep.
Yeah, as an
like
American,
you're not
if you
gonna
don't
get
have
it
an
out.
iPhone, it's kind of like
It
come
might
on.
be like Google, where it's like Google, like it's a part of our language. It's like just Google it, man. It's just lodged in there. Like
Just like send him an iMessage. Like,
yeah, just text them. Yeah, I don't know. Did you guys hear that ChatGPT passed a Wharton MBA exam?
Really?
That just happened a couple days ago,
That's crazy.
dude.
oh my gosh.
Like what? What's like that? The implications aren't just high school anymore. It's Are we over?
I mean, you can finish that thought and then we can wrap up.
Yeah. It's crazy, man. That's all I have to say. It's crazy.
Times.
All right. Good podcast.
We'll wrap it up there.
Next time.
Don't forget to say your prayers and may God bless you.